Well, for an update today, I posted, I think, pretty much everything to Slack. I've also got a Miro whiteboard fired up here. Just organizationally, let's see, where is all that? Yeah. So I'm making this real small on purpose just to talk about a few things that I've added here. So over in this area, well, down here at the bottom are some actual tests that I've run with links to bag files. I also, we've talked about it before, it would be nice to have different views of what's going on. And I was struggling with the TF tree and am I updating the right things? And anyway, this is work in progress over in this area to talk about the launch files and the topics they're posting to in the TF tree a little bit. To duplicate that, again, I'm not zooming in all the way because it just takes more time, but posted my actual TF tree that was taken just a week or so ago. And then I was also fiddling around with the robot description and the flow of files that get down to, the Zacro parameters, I'll call it that. So that's just, and then a little bit more about, and I'll talk more in depth about this, but up in this section, the map that Jeff suggested I work on, and then finally, if you zoom in, there's a box here with the number of documentation links that I just keep adding to it, like spreadsheet to keep track of milestones and some details. And there's links in here to other sections on this Miro board to try to make it a little bit easier to move around because it'll probably get unwieldy, but at the moment I'm liking the tool and it's helpful to be able to put different kinds of data here. So
Well,
anyway, back to status.
while you're right there and you're talking about it, if you figure out any way in Miro, you could say, put down, put a box and put a link that says point to a different section on this page. So you could like create an index.
Yes. There might be a more elegant way of doing it, but like these little blue boxes here at the bottom,
Yeah.
it will take me back to the documentation section. So it's a way to quickly get back to where you wanted to be. And I don't know why, but all of that documentation seems to have been duplicated on this left side. So this happened last week. So I think there's some memory things going on when I move stuff around. I've somehow copied it. So anyway, each of these boxes, you can click on it and you can get a link to it. And then you can copy that link someplace else in order to come back to that box. Very handy.
That way you just create a box as index and then under there have a line for each box that you add. And then that
You're
might be a good way to make that work.
And right now it's just sort of kludgy and, like your grandmother's attic. So I think somebody's with better organization skills could say, yeah, well, you could have 6 tables and this is the sections that you should have in the table and everything be linked nicely. But right now I just sort of moving things around. But back to actual field test results. few days ago, ran a number of tests. I was basically changing things like the step size, the look ahead distance, and then I would post the bag file and then a screen print of the results. The one that was seemingly the best out of the up to this point of the 8 that I've done had this step size of 1 and a look ahead distance of 2. And it's nothing glorious, but it ran the path and finished. And the squiggly lines, as you know, was don't worry about that. That's me getting ready to run. And then about right here, I flip it to auto mode and it wavers a bit, but then gets on the track. So my status is I'm going to make a couple more changes and try to figure out a configuration that might improve this a little bit. And then Jeff had suggested running the square path, which I had started to craft up here. So Jeff had originally provided he may not even remember it, but he had provided in a video before an example square path, and so I just updated the X and Y coordinates to fit my yard. So hopefully today or tomorrow I'll try to run this and see if the results are any better in a square pattern than what they've been in that Dubin's pattern. The other change I was thinking about making is my steer angle, my actual steer angle that comes from the 3-turn potentiometer. I smooth that data, not with a very complex smoothing algorithm, but with a simple algorithm. And so I was going to take that smoothing out. Well, I could leave the smoothing in and just point to the raw variable. So I'm wondering if there's a lag that the smoothing might cause. Well, there definitely would be a lag. And what I don't know is if it's enough of a lag to get that wavy steering that I'm getting. So anyway, that's trying to figure out if we can make that pure pursuit path follower work with my configuration one way or the other. Questions on any of that before I close this?
No. You can make that last point there where it stops. You could make it by specifying the angle that you want it to go, and then it will curve around before it stops. And then once you get that, you can just blatantly duplicate that 2 or 3 times. It'll drive around your square then 2 or 3 times, if that's what you want to do.
I have this example that you had provided again a long time ago. And I mean, that's yes, at some point I'd like to do that. And don't know how to do it off the top of my head as good as you do, but I'll sort of figure it out, I guess, when I get to that point. Because at the moment, I'm just trying to see if it will make these turns and get itself back on track without the S curve going on.
The other thing we were talking about steering radius, and you said you purposely set it too tight because you wanted a really tight circle. Let's keep in mind, it doesn't do any good to tell it something that it can't do. And number one, it's not going to do it. And then secondly, it's not going to be following the path because you told it that. And then thirdly, that might even confuse it if you're telling it to do something that it can't. So you said your actual steering radius seems to be 2 meters, then, don't, when you generate this path, don't set a steering radius tighter than 2 meters, because it won't do you any good and just going to cause more problems.
Roger that. I think this is, I have to pull up the path generator, but yeah, this is it set at 2 meters now. I'll go back and double check that. But it sort of looks like it when you've got it. I don't know if you can see that, but up here was 10, and up here was 12, and
Yeah, okay.
this is at 21, and then I'm going to guesstimate that that's 23, but I'll go back and double check. So anyway, that's where I'm at.
Oh, another reason why I was suggesting that you either drive in a square or drive in a triangle or something else is because a long time ago you were driving your lawn tractor, I think, behind your house or something. You tried to drive around your house, and if you're going like horizontal, it would work well. And if you're going vertical, it didn't work. And I don't remember what the answer to that was, but it was something. It could be similar to what's happening here. And let me see if I can pull up something here. See, that was under Slack.
Using this path planner thing, you think you can drive in a triangle? Something other than a
Yeah, you just say start at the bottom and drive up, and then drive to the left, and then when you're done, just say go from that point, go back to your original point, and that'll give you a diagonal across there. So it's just going to go where you tell it to. So here, let me look at this again. Pull this up. This up. And let's see, make this bigger. Now I distracted myself. Can't remember what I was going to pull up here. Let's see. I was going to look at that. Oh, this one here. And of course, here I'm going to have to go through some gyrations here, I think. No, can't do that. They've insisted on, if it's got a thread, it's going to open the thread for you. So let me try this. I can say open in new window. So where did it put that? Is that this one? Huh. Which window did it put it in? Here we go. I'm getting closer. Oh, come on. There, it's trying. So I was looking at this one. I noticed, as you pointed out, the very first line, the very first vertical line you did, you said it followed real close. And then it came around here and it didn't follow that because you got your radius set wrong. But then it's got this waviness to it. It almost looked like as it moves across, it gets worse as the farther left that it goes, which I was thinking, well, maybe that has something to do with the fact that, again, going horizontal as opposed to vertical acts differently or something. Maybe it's adding some extra variables onto that. So that's why I was thinking if you just create one that just has a single, say a point here at the top and a point at the bottom, and then just have it so it comes right back to itself. Instead of having multiple lines you're going on, just have it go up and down the same line. And if you just take the pattern you got right here, and anywhere it said move to the left, just make that the same. So basically you're just going to duplicate this point and this point. What is it, 6 times, 8 times, whatever you got there. And that way it'll come up to the top like this. It'll make your curve around like this and come right back to this point and then go down the same line again. That way you've got a single line you're driving up and down, so you can see, is it repeatable? And since it was straight on this line, it would be curious to see after it comes back around to the same point, is it going to be straight going back down, or is it going to start doing curvy stuff like this? So that's just something else to consider there, that it almost looks like, the farther you move to the left, the bigger this oscillation's getting, but that might just be an optical illusion. So But that's just something that's why I was suggesting you do these different patterns just to see how it acts like that. And as far
Yeah,
as
that,
as far as changing all the
mhm.
parameters like look ahead, number of points, yeah, you can do that endlessly, but I think you got a more fundamental problem here. You got to figure out why that's oscillating, and regardless of what you put in for your number of points and look ahead, I think it's a fundamental problem. You're going to figure out the obvious thing that's causing that, and then I think everything will calm down after that point.
I mean, you can see it visually there as the operator, when standing in the yard, it also visually looked like the oscillation was worse um, on the second, third, and fourth. Continually got worse.
Yeah, and it's hard to tell here, if it really is getting the oscillations are getting bigger as it goes over. If they are, that could be if you go over, quite a ways, they're going to be really bad. So I can't decide where that would be coming from. So whatever's happening, it looks like it's cumulative as you move farther left, it's getting worse. And I was trying to think what would be in your system that would be cumulative, and your wheel odometry would be. I don't know what you're using out of that, but that definitely over time will tend to either drift or the numbers in there are not going to be tracking where they're supposed to be. The GPS should be an absolute coming in. It's an absolute position, so that shouldn't get worse over distance like that. So I'm just trying to think of things that you may have that you may be using that would get worse over time. And like the stuff coming out of your IMU, I don't know if that, again, I'm not sure what you're using out of the IMU. It could be, it would accumulate errors. So it's just a matter of figuring out, which one is causing that. If that really is the problem. Again, I'm just making stuff up here. That might be something to consider on that.
No, it's a wonderfully valid train of thought because although I have changed to get my, um, bear with me a second. I changed my, I've added course over ground derived from the GPS, and I've been trying to use that. And so, um, I'm trying to eliminate or get something that's more stable because the IMU, was dependent on what was the initial heading coming out of the garage. And that could have been off a few degrees, but um, yeah, it's a
And,
wonderful train of thought.
and speaking of heading, you had a plot that said this is the GPS, a GPS heading, and then the IMU heading, and the GPS looked noisy. What was that a plot of? That was out on your Miro page where you had that.
Um, well, the course over ground is a bit, I mean, it fluctuates a little bit. And so when you smooth it out, it looks exactly like the IMU. So it reinforced my IMU data was probably okay, but I still want to spend the next day or two using course over ground from the GPS.
No, my question is that plot on your Miro page that says it's GPS yaw or GPS heading. What did you plot there? What were you actually looking at that point?
Well, the course over ground is calculated using the previous lat and longitude and the current lat and longitude and doing the what is it, the Haber-Sign formula to calculate the course over ground.
Okay, so I'll ask this one more time. What did you plot on that graph? Was that course over ground or was that something else you were plotting?
It's course over ground.
Okay.
I'm not looking at the plot, but my assumption is it was course over ground.
Because that does seem awful noisy. And I made the other comment that it could be it's your engine running that's picking up the vibration from your engine that's making it do that. So that somewhere one of the multiple things I posted, I said, here, go try this. Basically, as you're driving around, come to a stop, shut the engine off, pull out your switch on the back and just physically push the tractor ahead some amount of distance. And then at that point, right in the middle of the test, you can go back and go back and start your engine and continue your testing. But that will tell you if that vibration there goes away when you turn the engine off, that says it's your engine just making the whole thing vibrate that's causing it to do that. And the reason why I kept asking you where that came from, because nowhere does it say that's course over ground. You just said it's GPS heading or something like that.
Yeah, deriving y'all using GPS data. So yeah, you're right. I didn't mention.
So I just wondering if you had one thing that's particularly noisy, or if everything coming out of there is going to be that noisy. The other thing that looked odd there, say right there where your cursor is, see the IMU has a fairly straight slope going up, but there's a curve to the one coming off the GPS, and that seemed a little odd too, that it's not following closer than that. But I don't know, if you do more testing on that, maybe we'll have some more stuff to look at, so we can see what that's doing. Another thing you can do, you can derive both the speed and the heading from that navsat slash velocity message. It's a vector, it's a speed vector. So it's got your speed in the X direction and your speed in the Y direction. And you can take that apart and you can pull out, you can retrieve your forward speed, and you can retrieve your heading that you're going. But it turns out that was when they, in the driver, they built that from the course over ground and the speed over ground. So you would just be converted back to whatever, say, course over ground and speed over ground is giving you on your GPS. So that is a place you can get it, but again, you're just converting it back to what it started with, and it's probably going to look at exactly the same way on that. And I think in that, I posted that stuff out, what was it, Google Drive or something. I had a bunch of little utilities. I think I had one there that would do that. It would subscribe to that velocity command and then pull out, I think it would say forward velocity and heading. And then I think I was actually having a thing in there that would say if it would latch the speed, so, or latch the heading. So if you're below a certain speed, it would stop updating. So I think I put that code in there, and I found that when I started using that, the very first time I ran it, I was driving around, I came to a stop, but I had some noise, so it latched in a angle is like 30 degrees off, but it was indeed working. That will, as you come to a stop, whatever heading you were, it'll hold on to that until you start moving again, and then as soon as you start moving, then it goes back to the
Code you've made
generating.
public?
What's that?
Is that code you've made public?
I put it out on that Google Drive. At one point, I just copied some stuff out there. I said, "Oh, here's some useful routines out there," and I can't remember what it was called, but that's where it's at.
Yeah, because I don't use any latching at the moment, because I just have the one GPS antenna. The heading dances all over the place when I stop.
But that's the point. When you stop, you don't want it bouncing all over the place. You want it to just grab the last heading that you had, so it's not giving you garbage. And as soon as you start moving again, it just automatically starts updating and gives you what you want. So it just strips all that junk off if you do it that way. And it has nothing to do with dual antennas. It's just, any GPS, as long as you're moving, it's calculating a decent heading. And when you come to a stop, then it starts bouncing around because it's just picking up noise. So yeah, so number one, you can derive the stuff from the velocity command or the velocity topic. And then in there, if you just simply say if the speed is above something like 1/10 of a meter per second, go ahead and pass it on. If not, hold on to that. And that way, as you come to a stop, it doesn't care then that the yaw is bouncing around, because you're just not passing it on to the outside world. So if you want to use GPS heading, that's a good way to take advantage of that.
Yeah, good point.
So another thing that I was posting, all those things I posted last night, I was saying, if you go back to that plot, let's go back here. See, if you go back to this one, instead of having, you've got what, four vertical lines here. If you just make each one just move the point over here. So basically you're defining this point and defining this point, and a loop at the top and a loop at the bottom. If you go around that, say 3 or 4 times, it'll number one, it's going to give you a valid path. You can see if it's going off the path or not. And what was the other point I was going to make? Oh, so once you get it to that point, so you can drive that type of path, then come out here and put the thing, start up a test, and don't start the pure pursuit at all. Don't even start that. Just go ahead and manually drive around. So just you start at where you think this point is at the bottom. And that's why you want to put marks on the yard so you can see where you're going. And so if you put, say, nails and a string between here, you could actually follow the string with your vehicle and stay on path. But anyway, just drive around once, 3 or 4 times, and then save that bag file, and then go back and start up the test again. But this time, start pure pursuit, and then go ahead and drive in manual. Do exactly the same thing. So you just manually drive up and down this path multiple times, and then pure pursuit's trying to control. So you get all the values out of it, but you leaving it in manual so it can't actually move the vehicle around. So by watching that, if you're driving straight on this line here, it should say, okay, the steering, set it to straight, everybody's happy. But if you get off a little bit here, then you can see it'll start to try to correct. And I think that would be a very valuable thing to see, as you get off the line here, because you go around here, you're not going to be able to, I don't think you're going to be able to manually drive on that, but you'll be able to see pure pursuit trying to correct for that. You can watch it. It's going to create that off path error, and then it's going to create the requested steering angle. So you can watch all that stuff. And then there's a third, if you're doing that anyway, then start up a third test and go ahead and start a pure pursuit and let it drive around there. And that way you get all the values from the same day as you're driving up and down that predefined path. So that way I think you can go back and analyze that and see what it's doing. And the reason why I say you want pure pursuit running, but just ignore it, is because when I was watching one of your first plots, as it would come around, and it would come around and line itself up down here, and you came to a stop, and the steering says, oh, you need to change it by 3 degrees or something, while you're sitting there stop, because what it's doing is looking right here, and it was looking at a point up here, and as you'd move back and forth. So the steering was nice and stable. Everybody was happy. And then once you went ahead and started, then it started doing this weird oscillation stuff. But I think as long as you're driving it manually and trying to stay close to the path, I think pure pursuit will be happy, and it'll be, you can see the results, and I think they'll all be working fairly well, because I still think this is coming from somewhere else. And I'm not sure if it's your odometry or your transforms or weird stuff coming in on your GPS. I don't know what that is. So that just might be a handy thing to do and collect that data, just so you can go back and analyze that.
Yeah, definitely try to create that path and move those lines over on top of each other.
And you could even do that, but then rotate it 90 degrees so you're driving horizontally back and forth to see if that makes a difference too. So
yeah, you say that, and I'm chuckling because I still don't understand. I haven't quite mastered the language of those plots yet, but we'll work it out.
And the nice thing about that is you can put in your numbers and then just run it. So it just generates, without even running the vehicle, you can look at it on the screen and say, is that the path that I'm looking for? And then if it is, then theoretically you can pass it right to the vehicle and it should drive in the same path. So that'd be interesting to see. I'd go through those steps to see if that makes sense and does what you want it to.
A program that visualizes it, that is definitely helpful, because then you can see if you've got it all screwed up. I usually get it on about the 4th try.
I was going to make notes based on all the stuff I posted out there saying, oh, you try this or look at this. And I was thinking I should make notes of that. So I have a bullet point here, but I don't remember when any of that stuff was. So.
Well, just to validate that thought, it is a good thought, because whoever is to follow will have similar issues in field testing, and they're all good sort of logic paths to go down. So I second the motion to have you try to keep track of that. I know I'm making notes. But it does feel good to be in the yard testing, even though it's seemingly frustratingly slow. That's all I got for recording.
Back to this thing about your GPS heading, and I said, okay, it looks noisy. Now, if you were to plot that and plot your say latitude and longitude at the same time, or the resulting X, Y out of that conversion, does it look noisy too, or is it fairly straight?
Do you want me to open up a back file on Plot Juggler?
If it's convenient, we could do that.
Well, because um, I don't want you to have to ask the question 3 times again.
That's like the politicians that interview them and say, "So, what do you think about this?" And they'll just go babble on and on. In that case, they should just go back and ask the same question, like 3 times, and finally say, "So you're not going to answer this?" But
Well, to be clear, I am not trying to avoid your question. Uh, so, which one should I really don't know what the difference between any of these is, but if I do yesterday, it will have that. No, I was having some trouble getting the GPS.
and I finally decided at this point, if you just do a Control A, it selects all those, and that way you don't have to say, "Oh, I forgot to select that." I can go back and look at it again. So if you just do that,
Yeah, the issue is um, my GPS array is not showing up there, and the reason is because at that particular time I didn't have RTK fixed. So let's try. Um, See, this one doesn't have the GPS data in it. Just to see what's there. What was it? Control A or Control Shift A? No, Control A.
Control A will select everything, and then say okay, and that way you've got everything there at your fingertips. So previously I'd pick this and this and this, and I go run and say, "Oh, I want to know something else," and I can't remember if I could just immediately add that back in, or if I had to start over every time. So it just seems like it's easier to just stick them all in there and go with it.
Let's see if it actually moved. Yeah, here's a. So your question, this is actual ODOM position. What was your question again?
This is ODOM from, so this would be deriving it from GPS at this point.
Yes, this would be, well, this sort of gobbledygook is when I
Uh,
lose
yeah,
two.
before you switched. Okay. Go around the right there on one of your paths and just zoom in on it. Is that a fairly smooth path, or is it got a lot of jitter to it?
Oh, well, that, I mean,
So you can see the lines are fairly. Have you done any smoothing on that, or is that just simply your position from
this
the
is just the
GPS?
pose position from GPS.
Then it seems
And
odd
again,
that your heading would be that noisy, because if the points the GPS is putting out are fairly stable, it just seems like your heading should be a lot smoother than what it is.
well, again, this exhibits the same behavior as before, where the line going up is straight and then the oscillations. Because if I,
But I'm just looking, just like within a few inches is the point bouncing around. It doesn't seem to be, just like when you looked at that heading line and it was kind of seemed to have a lot of noise on it. And I don't see any of that in these positions right here. So
yeah, I mean, that's a very, I'm down to, a couple of inches and it's smooth as silk.
so the question is, why is the value coming out of the heading coming out of your GPS noisy? And again, as I said, you might want to check it with the engine not running and see if that noise goes away. you know, without doing a lot of digging, that'll just tell you very quickly, oh, the whole vehicle is shaking, and that's why it's doing that. And if it's has nothing to do with the engine running, then it's odd that your GPS is putting out a heading that's that noisy. Because if it's using these values to calculate from, it just seems like it should be, you know, a much smoother, much less noisy heading coming out of the thing. So
Yeah,
anyway,
I
that's something to think about.
see your point. Um, and because it is definitely, sure I remember which one of these is, which one is raw and which one is smoothed. Bear with me a second.
So at some point, if you have course over ground handy and you got your XY handy, you know, plot them all at the same time and see if it, you know, see what that looks like. And
Yeah, these are the elements in that. So I have course over ground, minus pi to pi, course over ground in degrees, and what um, the IMU is providing. So,
so do you have that course over ground right now that you could plot?
yep. You want smooth or raw?
Maybe put them both up.
3 and 6. And so crazy lines are when it's sitting still. And this, if we overlaid this with, when speed, you would see this is 0 speed, and that is
While you have that up, add in your IMU heading.
4.
And if you'd zoom in on somewhere that's supposed to be right, and yeah, that red line there, which is from the
Raw.
GPS, is awfully noisy. And you know, look at the if you're looking at the I see the IMU has a little bit of squiggle on there on the left. It has a little bit of squiggle to it, but it's not really enough to be probably not enough to be a problem.
What I was worried about is this gap between the two.
That does seem odd, yes.
And that's because, well, my hypothesis is that's because this line is adjusted based on the initial heading of the tractor when it drives out of the garage. And
Yeah, I think
I,
that's
have,
true.
I haven't been, crazy um, anal about making sure it's exactly the same heading that I've set.
But it's only off like a tenth to 2/10 of a degree. So again, it's probably not a big issue, but I keep wondering why the heading from the GPS is just so noisy. So and when you say looking at course over ground, that's actually the NEMA message coming out that said course over ground. Is that
I calculate it based on, as I mentioned, the Haber-Sign formula.
you calculated that, or did you take the value right out of the NEMA message that you're using?
I took the raw lat and longitude value out of the NEMA message and calculated it.
Oh, so it could be that you have done something to it there. Let's see, is there a quick way to get let's try to experiment here. Go back and pull up go back to your Plot Juggler.
Well, I'm going to do that, but I'm going to show you the code first just so you can see what I've done. So again, this is if I've got RTK fix, course over ground is the arctangent of the change in latitude and the change in longitude, and then smoothed is using this formula to smooth it.
One point on that, you might want to take your XY values as opposed to your latitude and longitude, because they're really huge numbers. And if you cut, once you convert it to X and Y, then you've got a reasonable amount of range. So it could be you've just got, just such huge numbers that's causing it to do that.
That's yep, that's a good idea. I've just
And it also depends if it's treating those as 32-bit floats or 64-bit floats, because you've got so large numbers there. It's going to be throwing off a lot of stuff in the lower, your lower digits when you convert that. And I don't know, I can't remember in Python how you tell it. It's either 64-bit or 32-bit floating point. I think it just assigns whatever it wants.
yeah, I was trying to find, forgot where my actual lat lambda xy command is, but it's in there somewhere. I'm sorry, I wanted to show you that code and you wanted to look at something else. Remind me again.
Go back to Plot Juggler. We'll try an experiment here. And then do you have your GPS messages? I assume that'll show up, say, under GPS, because you got a GPS fix, that you should have a GPS velocity.
You mean the actual sentences?
Well, I was thinking you should have a topic that's a GPS topic that's.
Fix has lat and lon.
Yeah, but I want the velocity. So do you say I one called vel? VEL, I mean.
Yeah, I think it's in there.
Okay, open that one. And under twist. So I would say, let's see, what do you got? Under linear, I believe.
Linear is speed. Is that what you want?
Well, look under both of them, see if anything shows up under this. What do you got under angular? So I'm going to say it's the linear one that you want. Just plot the X and Y linear, as two separate plots.
Two separate plots, not combined.
Right. And then plot the other one. Now, right click on your graph and say, apply filter to data. And let's see, absolute derivative, integral, moving average. Now there's a way you can put calculations in here. So we could take this data and run like you did otherwise. You could take the arctangent of y over x or x over y, but I don't see a way to put that in right here as a equation. Now somewhere it says you can use Lua equations. He says, oh, it's really easy. You can learn it in 5 minutes. And I never learned it, so I don't know how it works. But somehow you can go in and by taking those two values you got there, say make up a new equation to apply to that. So we could take the arctangent of those two and basically calculate our heading out of that. So again, I don't know how you maybe you close this one to just say cancel, and then right click again on your plot and see what else we got besides filters. I don't see it. It could be you got to do like a custom series or something. But somewhere in his documentation is, oh, if you need to do something else, we can just whip up a equation. You can do anything you want, but I don't know how to do that. You might zoom in on those things that you plotted there. Zoom in and see how noisy those are.
Let's get to a point where
It's got a few little spikes in there going on, you know, the bigger stuff right at the top. It does have something going on there. But I'm still thinking it might just be due to the resolution. So I'd say go back to your code and use the X and the Y instead of the latitude and longitude and see if that helps on what's coming out of the thing.
That's definitely a good suggestion to another path to go down.
And if somebody wants to spend time figuring out how to do these Lua equations in here, that would probably be handy, but I don't have the ambition right now to figure that out.
Not even sure I knew you could do that, but
And another
But-
thing you can do is you can go out and, like, say I put that code out there that I was translating that stuff. If you could track that down, actually load that node up, start that node so it's running, and then say do a ROS bag play, and it's going to take the values and do the calculations and publish the new value. And so it's going to give you the heading that it thinks it is. Now there's something funny about, I think, between
So-
your GPS and my GPS, that velocity, there's something funny about the topic is different between the two, and I can't remember what it was. So just keep in mind there something there was funny, and I can't remember. It might have been the difference between the simulation, what the simulator is putting out, and my GPS, or it might have been my GPS to your GPS. There's something funny about the format of that topic, I think. So just keep that in mind. If it's looking funny, there might be something about the format of the messages.
and so your um, calculate from, and your suggestion was calculate from the X and Y from which topic? Velocity? Heading.
So that's one thing you can do, or go back to the code you already have and just switch from latitude and longitude to X and Y, and just to see if that makes a difference.
Yeah. Cool.
I'm trying to remember that stuff, where that stuff is that I had. I think if we go to the, let me go to Slack and say, but at one point people were putting their workspaces out under one of the Google, I don't know, it's Google Drives or Google Docs or whatever it was, probably Google Drives. And people were putting, taking their current workspace and putting it out there. That's where I put that stuff. And I don't remember how to get there. If I could pull up Slack, because I had archived some stuff. The original message we had, I'd archived those links, and I had a link that would point out to where those were, but I don't remember what it is right offhand. What happened to how do I get my Slack to come back up like this? Like this. Once I get my fiber optic internet running, then I can get a better computer. So get a faster computer, so I don't have all these problems here that I'm having now. So let's see, is it later? But originally we had that message. There was a pinned message that said, here's all the valuable links and various other things like that. And I don't know if I can find that again. I think I finally was smart enough. I copied it out to a file somewhere. So if I go digging, I can find that thing. Because I was thinking we should repost that every 90 days, since stuff just falls off the back of Slack every 90 days. And I don't know that I have. It's archived. I do have it here. Let me just repost this. edit it. Okay, copy that. And then go to Slack. And go to random. Come on. That didn't work. Useful links. Okay. So on Slack, let me see, how can I get that to come up? If I do like share screen here. Okay, do that, do that. So this is the comment about it's good to put it up on video because otherwise, nobody, either people can't get to Slack or it's going to fall off the back of Slack. So anyway, here's the stuff. Can I zoom in a little bit here? So it just says useful links. This is the one that was posted at the top of general, I think, and but of course it's gone away. So if you come down here, it says Google Drive links, wands, action last note. Saved videos. Nope. It's got to be this one. Google Drive folder link, configurations, actions. Here, saved workspaces. If we go out here, of course, it's going to come up on the wrong screen. So down here, Jeff's Ackerman simulation. Well, Jeff Pure Pursuit. Probably this one. Source. So there's just the workspaces that whatever I was working on at the time. That's probably under Jeff. And scripts. So here it's got GPS heading. So probably this GPS heading.py is probably the one. GPS ODOM. My GPS heading. So there's various copies of stuff here. This either my GPS heading or GPS heading. Let's take a look at GPS heading and see what it looks like. It says probably created by Matt. I kept adding stuff in because the original one was just I think it was pulling up the heading from that velocity message. And I realized if you just take square root of x squared plus y squared, it gives you the speed back out of it. So I pulled those out, and then one of them I said, based on the speed, either latch the heading or not. So let's see, let's try this. Copy and go back. How do I get my chat window back? Oh, that's right there. So if I say do that, so I put the link to this page out in chat, and again, it's got one of those stupid 20 digit links to it. But if you have access to this Google Drive and you put that link in, it should take you there. So I've got that one. Let's back up one page. I don't know if you can navigate. Here, let me go down. Let me put this page out. Control
If I
copy.
click on the link, it opens up.
What's that?
If I click on the link, it opens up.
Okay, but I don't know in Google Drive how you can back up one level from that. So I'll post this link is the one I'm showing right now. It's got all the scripts listed here. So and there's all kinds of just random junk in there, but either the one I just had that said was called GPS, what was it called? GPS heading. Yeah, GPS heading, or down here, my GPS heading might be the improved one. Yeah, the one's just called head test, I think is trying to generate the heading from a GPS message. but they're just various things in here. What was that top one said?
Do you happen to recall if you used X and Y, or did you use lat long?
Well, it's using the XY out of that velocity message. So it subscribes to the velocity message, and from there it pulls off the XY value, which is a vector, a speed vector, and then it does the arctangent of like y over x to give you the heading, and then it takes the square root of x squared plus y squared, and that gives you back your velocity in meters. And when they generated that velocity message, they went to the trouble to take speed over ground and course over ground and generate it into this vector that I don't really have a use for. So that this program is just taking that back apart and giving you the, telling you what's actually in there. So that'd be like if you go back to your NMEA Navsat driver and just subscribe to whichever message has course over ground, and the same message might also have speed over ground, or there might be two separate messages. But that's another thing you could do, is just subscribe to those coming out of, you've got code right now that's pulling up like the GP GGA message and processing that. You could just have something else that says, look at whichever message has the speed over ground and course over ground, and you could just pull it up directly without doing a lot of without having to convert stuff back and forth many times. So anyway, that's the two suspects right there. The one that's called it was called what, my GPS heading.py. It's probably just a variation of the GPS heading.py. Well, here's the GPS heading new.py. So see, I did a lot of hacking here. So what are
February
the,
23.
what's that?
Look at the last modified date.
Well, that might be a July. And just because what I modified it doesn't mean that it was anything that worked or anything valuable, but anyway, that's somewhere to look. I've got all these little converter routines in here that might be handy. So, and as I say, if you just take whichever one of these you want to use, we'll say GPS heading.py. And I think these are ROS nodes, so you might have to do a ROS run to start the node. And if you say ROS bag playback, is that what it's called? ROS bag play, as it generates the velocity topic, this thing subscribes to that and then puts out a new topic called let's see what it's called. Publish. So here's a head degree publish. So it's going to put out something called GPS head degree. And I think I probably published in both degrees and radians, just again, because I don't like to deal in radians. GPS speed. So it looks like it's going to publish GPS speed. It's going to publish something called heading. And you got to be careful you're not publishing something with the same topic name. So either do a rename, or you could, go in the code here and say that it's, create a new name for, can I zoom in on that?
Where's the subscribe statement?
Well, here's the self velocity callback. It's part of that. So no, let's publish. Well, let's do this. Control fine sub. So right there, GPS 0 fixed velocity. So mine wasn't called vel, it was called fixed velocity. So that, just keep that in mind. And it's just simply subscribing to, let's see, actually that's a commented outline. What's this one say? Fixed velocity, vector, 3D stamped. So here's one of the things I was just talking about. On this one that's commented out, it says it's a message of twist with covariance stamped, and the one I'm actually using is a vector 3 stamped. So that might have been the difference I was thinking between the two. So the simulator puts out one format, and I think my actual GPS, which the driver I'm using, puts out the other format and message. So that's so if you get that far, that's what that's telling you there, is that the topic type has to match, and that so I set it up to do it both ways there, I think.
And the topic GPS 0, what would you guess was publishing that?
That was coming out of my F9P driver or whatever it's called. It's the GPS driver that goes with my GPS boards. So if you're using NMEA NavSat driver, yours probably just publishes something called GPS. The reason it says GPS 0 is because I had 2 GPS receivers on my vehicle, and then that worked its way into the 2 on the simulator. So originally it would have been called /GPS/vel is what's coming out of, should be coming out of your driver. But the 0 got stuck on there because I had two GPS receivers is why that happened. The last time I looked at your stuff, your topic is called GPS 0. So that you just have to make it match whatever you run it at the time. So that yeah, 2 degrees here. Let's look to see if this one is velocity is nan, use the last heading. There was something funny about the way this got done too, about getting nan values coming in, and I don't remember what the answer to that was, but I think the way Matt had it set up, he said if you get a nan value, just put everything back to 0 instead of leaving it alone. So if you go watch it, your point keeps jumping back to your 0 point whenever you get a weird value coming in. And I'd see velocity callback, blah, hold heading quaternion, LCI equals that. New heading degrees. Anyway, one of these has that thing about it just says if your velocity is above a certain point, publish it. And if not, just hang on to the last one. And that just effectively latches it. So when you come to a stop, it's not bouncing around with all that noise on it. So that's fairly easy to get rid of. It's just that if you happen to pick up noise as it does that, it's going to latch the wrong value in. And you could do something like, take an average of the last few and use that as the latched value, or, just have basically an array of like the last 10 values. And if you get anything, look down the line and say, these are all approximately the same. So we'll take that value. And if you got one that's way off, throw that out. There's lots of different things there you could do. The quickest thing just is say, if my speed is less than, say, 1/10 of a meter per second, don't publish that, just hold on to it. And then if it's above 1/10 of a meter per second, just pass it through. And that gets around it fairly quickly. And if you have problems with it latching the wrong value, then you can do a little more to figure it out. Heading degrees. Oh, right here it is. So it comes in right here. It says new heading degrees. It says the yaw is going to be the float of arctangent x over y, which is what you're just doing. And then it says, then I just convert it to degrees because I'm selfish that way. So the speed is just simply the square root of x squared plus y squared, and that returns a value in meters per second of the speed in the direction you're pointed right now. And then it's going to publish that. It's going to publish the, let's see what's going to do. It's going to publish the speed and publish the heading, the yaw. And then right here, I say if the speed is greater than 0.1 meters per second, then it goes ahead and publishes that. Otherwise, it just holds on to it and doesn't do anything with it. So this particular one, which is called GPS heading new.py, I would say start with that one if you want to hack on it, or at least see what I'm doing there. And again, this will subscribe to the velocity message from your GPS driver, and then it will generate a speed and a heading. And I thought it, I also put the heading in degrees. And I was thinking it published one other thing, but I don't recall what it was. So that should give you a heading directly from your GPS. And if you want to, you can check to see if that's less noisy than what you had, or you could compare, actual course over ground coming out of your messages. In fact, here, let me stop sharing here. If you go back to your Plot Juggler, are you saving the actual NMEA messages anywhere, or do those get thrown out so you don't save those?
The sentences themselves?
Yes. And I don't know what they'd be called, or I don't know how your conversion stuff works. So
Yeah, I don't.
and it could be whatever's doing that conversion isn't actually publishing that as an intermediate topic.
Yeah, I mean, I have utilities to, get to the sentence if I need to, but um, I mean, my, I'm using the standard ROS NMEA reader. I don't have it in my Captain workspace. But no, I don't believe there are any topics with the actual NMEA sentences in them.
Okay. But I would say the first thing you should try is go back to the code you were just showing me that's using latitude and longitude and just use the XY value there instead and see if that gets rid of a lot of that noise.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, try to use your code and just add another I mean, I'm liking these arrays. Just add to this that value and be able to compare.
But just remember my warning. If you add a new value to your array, always add it onto the end. Because if you put it out in the middle, that screws up all the numbers. It screws up the order of everything. So you come back in a month and look at it and say, well, these aren't right. They're not in the right spot. So
Yeah,
if you add on to it, always add a new one onto the end every time.
you saw how I have to go back to this list that shows what the heck is number 2 and number 3 and number 4, because I don't remember.
Yep.
But yeah, there's definitely some oscillation coming from someplace there.
So does that give you enough stuff to look at until next time?
Yes, it definitely does.
I'm gonna play with my video a little bit here. So it's not set to HD, and if I set it to HD, it just seems to give me a wider view and probably a better quality image. Anyway, I just thought of that. So
On my end, you got farther back. It's like you took.
yeah, I did that too. And I was thinking I probably shouldn't run HD since I don't have my fiber turned on yet, but it, I just realized I've been running it the whole time this time and it hasn't screwed up anything. So considering my upload speed is 1 megabit per second, it's amazing anything works, but it seems to. So it will go from 1 megabit per second to 500 megabits per second. So I'll be able to upload 500 times faster when they finally turn me on. And for anybody else out in the world, I'm extremely fortunate because they decided we're going to put this high-speed fiber all throughout Minneapolis, and they're going to install it for free, and then I just pay $60 a month. Now there's a guy down in Alabama somewhere that's doing a nightly broadcast, and they have the same problem where they've got some old internet. And I don't know if it's I don't know if they mentioned if it's cable or DSL like I have, but he's pointing out they kept waiting for it to show up, and it finally showed up right out on the street in front of their house. But then they're going to charge them thousands of dollars to run a fiber from there up to the house to make the thing work. So depending where you are in the world, how greedy people are, they it, some people are more fortunate than others, and I just happen to luck out here on this. So that's just something to consider. But other than that, I guess that's all I got to talk about. Let me remember to save the chat. Okay, you got anything else?
You can turn off recording.